Hello guys, it is me, the Tank Index here. Today we're going to be talking about the Renault NC tanks, which is basically a series of upgrades made to the FT for mainly export service. And yeah, let's just get off it. This is sort of like basically France's Vickers 6-ton export tank. Some of the backstory. In 1918, only a year after the FT was introduced, the French were already looking to improve its design, planning to make a new version of it after 1200 of the 12,000 after of the original version were produced. In the end, by the armistice, but by 1919, that was a very armor-heavy offensive. So 12,000 that would be easily produced. But in the end, only about a fourth of that was actually produced, and once budget cuts in 1922 happened, the project was essentially postponed. France already had the largest armor force in the entire world, with an organic force of 1,260, all of which being FTs, so they didn't exactly need more FTs. Um, Worries about the tank's versatility, though, came up, though, especially in terms of service in France's many colonies. The main flaw was its top speed of only about 5 miles an hour, which, while alright and really the basis in World War One, was quickly becoming far too slow in the 20s. In 1925, Renault did convert 42 vehicles with a Kigressi, damn my French, suspension, as well as rubber, steel, and forced tracks for a top speed of 10-ish miles an hour. When sent to the Rif War in North Africa, it was found that the tracks would literally snap at top speed. Despite this, 9 would be sold to Yugoslavia and 5 to Poland, because, profit and all that. With the need of faster tank arising, the team at Renault got permission to come up with the Prel design in 1923. Two prototypes were connected, the NC1 and the NC2. The NC1 had a completely new suspension system with 3 vertical volute springs along with 12 wheels, and a speed of 11-ish miles an hour, being the fastest French tank at the time and capable for cavalry service. Its armor ranged from 8 to 30 millimeters and weighed 8 tons with a combat range of 75 miles. Meanwhile, the NC2 was essentially a Kigressi FT, but with reinforced rubber tracks so that it wouldn't snap along the leaf spring suspension. The engine was also piped to 62 bhp and later to 75. Its armor went from 8 to 34 millimeters, but weighed a further 9.5 tons, which at the same time was really a 7-ton infantry tank, so that definitely was towing the line. The first Renault proposal was to convert the aging FTs of the French armor force into the NC1 standard. However, the 1926 plan had taken into account that the planned heavy design of the Char B1, as seen on the upper left, wouldn't be available for production in high number due to its cost. This opened up the desire for more numerous light tanks. So, for example, there might be, 5 FT light tanks to every Char B1. And so, this concept was labeled as the, Char Léger d'Accompagnement d'Infanterie, or Light Infantry Support Tank. Because most of the time we're really going for a, heavy tank and an infantry tank. Renault immediately proposed the NC1, which is now relabeled as the Renault Modèle 26/27. There is some nomenclature confusion with it though, because the NC27 was also called the NC1, despite the NC2 also being built alongside it. The NC27 was actually an export designation, despite being just as inaccurate as the FT17 label, and it encompassed both the NC1 and NC2. Even more confusing was that the NC2 was also called the Renault Model 2627 in French nomenclature. So basically I don't understand this, and you guys probably don't understand either. While the NC1 was originally chosen by the army, the French wouldn't order any until heavily modified into the NC28 and later Char D. Many countries that already had FTs, however, did order some of the new versions. These included Japan, Yugoslavia, and Poland, as in the upper left, which modified these tanks. In 1928, one was sold to Sweden to experiment with, labeled the Stridsvagn FN28. A year later, in 1921, Japan bought a heavily modified 10 as the Otsugatu Sencha Type B. Poland got 5 NC1s and 1 NC2, the NC2 being modified to 25mm armor with a weight of 9.5 tons. The Netherlands and Greece bought one as well, though only for experimentation. The Yugoslavian and Polish ones would fight desperately when they were invaded because, I'm guessing if they had, a sailboat, they probably would have put a 1700s cannon on and put it into service, so an old tank, sure. There were some downsides though. The NC suspension was both expensive and difficult to maintain. It combined a triple coil spring suspension, 6 vertical hydro pneumatic shock absorbers, which themselves served 3 4-roller bogies, If you didn't understand any of that, don't worry, I don't either. The clutch and gearbox had mechanical problems, and while having a good engine at 12 miles an hour, a Pateau 37mm gun or Hotchkiss machine gun, the problems just outweighed the successes. The only NC-27 that survived is the one Sweden bought, which is at the Armor Museum of Axevall. The original NC2 model was derived from its original prototype, which had the same gig rescue suspension. The second one was later designated as the NC28, where two prototypes were made. It had a prototype turret from the Char de Bataille, having a modified suspension along with the new light tracks designed by Colonel Byand, I don't know, which allowed for further speeds. The hull was enlarged to fit its larger turret, but it remained stable as an upgraded FT. As you can see, the turret is pretty wacky. And then we have the NC31, named the NC3 in Renault nomenclature. Its design differed way from just a modified FT. It featured the large Schneider ST1 cast turret with a newer 37mm gun, a coaxial rival machine gun, a broader hull, complete side armor, and a new nose that didn't resemble the FTs at all. This FT nose is very iconic. The Army ordered 10 of these prototype pre-production vehicles, which would evolve into D1. So really, through the NC series, I mean, the Renault would go from the FT17 through the NC and eventually become the Char D1, which is a pretty impressive change. Onto the final assessments. The NC series of tanks was a pretty wild bunch. Every single variant did the purpose required of them and upgrade to the FT. They definitely had problems in the beginning, such as, tracks literally snapping when they were in Algeria and Tunisia, which is pretty bad for a tank. The NC1 and 2 were both excellent upgrades on the FT, and while the NC27 was difficult to maintain, it is arguably the peak version of the FT. By that point, the base chassis and design was just simply obsolete, but the NC28 did the best with what it could. Eventually, the NC31 was an excellent vehicle, which would lead to one of the most definitive, iconic French tanks of World War II, the Char D1. I'll be with the video. Next time, we're going to go back to British tanks with the Vickers Medium Mark II, so I hope you see you there. See you then.